Millionaire leaves safe open on purpose to test her gardener. What he did shocked her. Before we jump in, this story reached people in over 50 countries last week. Let's see how far it goes today. The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Victoria Sterling's mansion as she stood by the window, watching her gardener work. At 32, Victoria had built a tech empire worth billions, but success had taught her a harsh lesson. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. Another test, she whispered to herself, her emerald eyes reflecting the calculated coldness that had become her shield. 3 years ago, her business partner had embezzled millions. 2 years ago, her fiancé had sold company secrets to competitors. Last year, even her personal assistant had leaked confidential information to the press. Victoria's fingers traced the edge of her coffee cup as she observed Ethan Mitchell pruning the rose bushes. He'd been working for her for 6 months now, always punctual, always respectful. But she'd learned that the most dangerous betrayals came from those who seemed the most trustworthy. Mrs. Sterling, her head of security, Marcus, appeared in the doorway. "The safe in your study has been left open as you requested. The cameras are recording, but as you instructed, I've disabled the alarm system." Victoria nodded, her heart hardening with each betrayal she'd endured. "Good. Let's see what kind of man Ethan Mitchell really is. Tell him I need him to check the study for a wasp nest. Make it sound urgent." Marcus hesitated. "Ma'am, are you certain about this? Ethan seems like a good man. He has a daughter. Everyone seems good until they're not." Victoria cut him off, her voice sharp as broken glass. "I've made that mistake too many times. Just do it." As Marcus left, Victoria moved to her monitoring room where multiple screens showed different angles of her study. The safe stood wide open, stacks of cash visible along with jewelry and important documents. She deliberately left $50,000 in cash scattered on the desk nearby, as if she'd been counting it and gotten distracted. On screen, she watched Ethan enter the study, his weathered hands still dirty from the garden. He stopped dead in his tracks when he saw the open safe and the money. Victoria leaned forward, her pulse quickening. This was the moment of truth. Ethan looked around, clearly confused. He pulled out his phone, and Victoria's hands clenched. Was he calling accomplices? Taking photos to sell? But then she heard his voice through the speakers. "Mr. Marcus, sir. I'm in Mrs. Sterling's study looking for that wasp nest, but there's an open safe here and money all over the desk. I think something might be wrong. Should I call the police?" Victoria's eyes widened. Most people would have pocketed at least some of the cash before reporting it, if they reported it at all. She watched as Ethan carefully avoided touching anything, standing guard by the door while waiting for Marcus. But what happened next made Victoria's carefully constructed walls begin to crack. Ethan noticed a photo that had fallen from the safe, a picture of Victoria with her late mother. He gently picked it up, dusted it off with his shirt, and placed it carefully back in the safe, whispering, "No amount of money is worth more than memories of those we love." 20 minutes later, Victoria found herself pacing in her office, her mind reeling from what she'd witnessed. Ethan had not only refused to take anything, but he'd also insisted on staying to make sure nothing was disturbed until security arrived. Even more surprisingly, he'd asked Marcus if Mrs. Sterling was okay, expressing genuine concern that she might have been forced to open the safe under duress. "Pull up his file," Victoria commanded her assistant, Sarah, who had just arrived. "I want to know everything about Ethan Mitchell." As Sarah typed, Victoria's mind wandered to her father's words before he died. Victory, success without humanity, is just failure wearing a crown. She dismissed those words after her string of betrayals, but now they echoed in her mind. "Here it is," Sarah said, pulling up Ethan's information. Ethan Mitchell, age 35, widower. His wife died of cancer 2 years ago, leaving him with their daughter, Lily, who's now 7. He works 3 jobs to pay for her private school and medical bills. She has type 1 diabetes. Victoria's throat tightened. 3 jobs? "Yes, ma'am. He works here in the mornings, does landscaping for the community center in the afternoons for free. Apparently it's where his daughter goes for after-school care, and stocks shelves at a grocery store 3 nights a week." The image of the tired man she'd seen every morning suddenly shifted into focus. The slight stoop of his shoulders wasn't from laziness but exhaustion. The worn clothes weren't from carelessness but from putting his daughter's needs first. Why didn't he apply for a full-time position here? Victoria asked, though she already suspected the answer. Sarah pulled up his application. He did, actually, but it was rejected because he needed flexible hours to take his daughter to medical appointments. The previous head of household staff marked him as unreliable, due to scheduling conflicts. Victoria felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Shame. She'd built walls so high that she'd stopped seeing the humanity in others, measuring everyone by their potential to betray rather than their actual character. "Get Marcus," she ordered, "and pull up the security footage from the past 6 months, all of it." What Victoria discovered in those recordings shattered her remaining defenses. She saw Ethan arriving early to work on days when his daughter had been sick all night, never complaining. She saw him carefully tending to her mother's favorite roses, the ones Victoria had forgotten she'd mentioned in passing. She saw him eating a simple sandwich for lunch while reading medical journals about pediatric diabetes. But the recording that broke her happened just last week. During a storm, a valuable garden statue had fallen and shattered. Ethan had spent his lunch break trying to glue it back together. When that failed, she watched him make a phone call, then later saw him carrying an identical statue, one he must have purchased himself to replace it. He'd never mentioned it, never asked for reimbursement. "Ma'am?" Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Ethan is still in the study, insisting on staying until you personally verify nothing is missing." Victoria stood, her decision made. "Bring him to my office. It's time I had a real conversation with Mr. Mitchell." As she waited, Victoria realized that in testing Ethan's honesty, she'd uncovered her own dishonesty. The lie she'd been telling herself that trust was weakness. Sometimes the greatest risk wasn't in trusting others, but in refusing to trust at all. Ethan Mitchell stood in Victoria Sterling's office, his work boots leaving faint traces of garden soil on the Persian rug. His calloused hands fidgeted with his worn baseball cap as he faced the woman he'd only seen from a distance for 6 months. "Mrs. Sterling, I want to apologize if I overstepped," Ethan began, his voice steady despite his obvious nervousness. "I just couldn't leave your study unguarded with all that money lying around. I hope you understand." Victoria studied him, seeing him truly for the first time. His brown eyes held a weariness that spoke of long nights and heavy burdens, but also a dignity that no amount of hardship had diminished. "Sit down, Mr. Mitchell, please." Ethan hesitated, glancing at his dirty clothes. "Ma'am, I'll soil your furniture." "Sit," Victoria insisted, her tone softer than she'd used with anyone in years. "The furniture can be cleaned." As Ethan reluctantly took a seat, Victoria found herself struggling with how to begin. "How do you apologize for seeing someone as a potential thief rather than a human being?" "I owe you an apology," she finally said, watching surprise flicker across his features. "The open safe, it was a test. I've been betrayed by people I trusted, and I've become someone who tests everyone, trusting no one." Ethan's expression shifted from surprise to something like understanding, tinged with sadness. "I'm sorry you've been hurt, Mrs. Sterling, but if you don't mind me saying, testing people like that, it seems like a lonely way to live." The simple honesty of his words hit Victoria harder than any boardroom confrontation ever had. "You're right," she admitted, surprising herself. "Tell me about your daughter. Lily, isn't it?" A transformation came over Ethan's face, his eyes lighting up with a father's love. "She's 7, and she's the strongest person I know. When the doctors diagnosed her diabetes, she just looked at them and said, 'Okay, so I need to be extra careful with my body. I can do that.' She was 5. Victoria felt her eyes burn with unexpected tears. "Your wife, Sarah, mentioned she passed away. I'm sorry." "Thank you," Ethan said quietly. She was everything. When she got sick, she made me promise to keep Lily's life as normal as possible. That's why I work so much. Not just for the medical bills, but for dance classes, art supplies, all the things that make her feel like a regular kid. Why didn't you mention your situation when you applied here? We could have worked something out." "With respect, ma'am, my situation isn't unique. Lots of people have challenges. I didn't want pity, I wanted work. You gave me that and I'm grateful. Your garden, it's become my sanctuary. When I'm working with the roses, especially your mother's white ones, I feel peace." Victoria's breath caught. "How did you know those were my mother's?" Ethan smiled gently. "You touched them once when you thought no one was looking. The way you handled them, I recognized it. It's the same way I touch Emma's favorite yellow roses in my small garden at home." In that moment, Victoria realized that while she'd been building walls, Ethan had been quietly paying attention, seeing her humanity even when she'd stopped seeing it in others. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Mr. Mitchell, Ethan," she began, making a decision that would have seemed impossible an hour ago. "I'd like to offer you a different position. Full-time, with complete medical coverage for you and Lily, flexible hours for her appointments, and a significant raise." Ethan's eyes widened. "Mrs. Sterling, That's incredibly generous, but I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," Victoria interrupted firmly. It's an investment in someone who's proven their worth in ways that have nothing to do with money. I need someone I can trust to manage the household staff, someone who sees people as more than potential problems. I don't have experience managing. You manage 3 jobs while raising a daughter with a chronic illness. I think you can handle scheduling and supervising. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his eyes suspiciously bright. Lily won't believe this. She's been saving her allowance to buy me new work boots for Christmas. The following Monday marked a new beginning in the Sterling mansion. Ethan arrived not in his worn gardening clothes but in the professional attire Victoria had insisted on providing. The transformation was remarkable, but what struck Victoria most was how the other staff members naturally gravitated toward him. "Morning, Mr. Mitchell," called Rosa, one of the housekeepers. "My son got into that college program you told us about. Thank you for the recommendation letter." Victoria, observing from her study, realized there was an entire ecosystem of kindness in her home that she'd been blind to. With Ethan at its center, he knew every staff member's name, their children's struggles, their dreams and fears. "Mrs. Sterling," Ethan knocked on her open door. "I've reviewed the staff schedules, and I have some suggestions if you're interested." "Always," Victoria said, gesturing for him to enter. As he laid out his proposals, adjustments that would give the single parents more flexibility, a rotation system that would prevent burnout, she found herself impressed by his intuitive understanding of human needs. "Also," Ethan added hesitantly, "I noticed we discard a lot of fresh flowers weekly. I was wondering if we could donate them to the children's wing at the hospital where Emma spent her final days. It might brighten someone's difficult time." Victoria's throat tightened. In all her strategic thinking, she'd never considered such simple acts of kindness. "That's a wonderful idea. Implement it immediately." As days turned into weeks, Victoria found herself looking forward to their morning meetings. Ethan had a way of seeing solutions where others saw problems, of finding humanity in situations where she'd only seen liability. One evening, working late, she heard unexpected laughter from the kitchen. Following the sound, she found Ethan teaching the younger staff members how to make paper flowers. "My Lily loves these," he explained, his fingers deftly folding paper. "When she was in the hospital last year, the nurses taught her. Now she makes them for other kids during her checkups." Victoria lingered in the doorway unnoticed, watching him interact with the staff. There was no hierarchy here, just people sharing a moment of creativity and connection. This was what she'd been missing, not just in her home but in her life. Mrs. Sterling. Maria, the youngest maid, spotted her first. The group started to disperse, but Victoria stepped forward. "Please don't stop. Could you show me?" The surprise on everyone's faces quickly melted into warm acceptance as Ethan pulled out a chair for her. As his patient hands guided hers through the folds, Victoria felt something she hadn't experienced since before her mother's death: belonging. "The secret," Ethan said quietly, "is not to fight the paper. Work with it. Find its natural bends. Like people, really. Everyone has their own way of blooming." Later that night, Victoria placed her crooked paper flower next to her mother's photo. For the first time in years, she smiled at the memory instead of aching from the loss. But the real change came when Ethan brought Lily to the mansion one Saturday. The little girl, with her father's kind eyes and an infectious smile, carried a handmade card. "Daddy says you gave him a better job so I can go to the doctor without him worrying," Lily said, presenting the card with the solemnity only a 7-year-old could manage. "Thank you for taking care of my daddy. He takes care of everyone else, but sometimes he forgets to take care of himself." Victoria knelt to Lily's level, accepting the card with hands that trembled slightly. Inside, in careful childish script, were the words, "Thank you for seeing my daddy's heart." 3 months into Ethan's new position, Victoria faced a crisis that would have once sent her spiraling into paranoid isolation. A major business deal had fallen through due to a leak from within her company. The old Victoria would have launched a witch hunt, trusting no one, suspecting everyone. Instead, she found herself in the mansion's garden at dawn, where Ethan was still tending to the roses despite his promotion. It had become his meditation, he'd told her, his way of starting each day grounded. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked without looking up, somehow sensing her presence. "Someone betrayed me," Victoria said simply, surprised by how easily the words came. "A deal I've been working on for 2 years. Gone because someone sold information to a competitor." Ethan straightened, studying her with those perceptive eyes. "And you're here instead of in your office hunting for the culprit because I realized something," Victoria admitted, moving to sit on a nearby bench. "The last time this happened, I spent weeks investigating, questioning everyone, destroying morale. In the end, I found the traitor, but I'd lost the trust of a dozen good people in the process. So what will you do differently this time? Victoria watched him carefully. Deadhead arose, his movements precise yet gentle. I thought I'd start by talking to someone I trust. Novel concept for me. Ethan smiled, joining her on the bench. Trust is like these roses, Mrs. Sterling. You can't force it to bloom, and if you grip too tight, you'll only get thorns. But if you tend it properly, it grows stronger than you'd imagine. When did you become so wise? Victoria asked, finding herself genuinely curious about this man who'd entered her life so unexpectedly. Hospital waiting rooms, Ethan replied quietly. You spend enough time in them, watching people face their darkest moments. You learn what really matters. Emma used to say that crisis doesn't build character, it reveals it. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun painted the garden gold. Finally, Victoria spoke. Will you help me? Not to investigate, but to handle this differently. To focus on strengthening the team I can trust rather than hunting for the one I can't. Of course, Ethan said simply. But first, can I share something? Last week, Lily asked me why you always look sad when you think no one's watching. I didn't know how to answer her. Victoria's breath caught. What did you tell her? That sometimes people build walls to protect their hearts, but walls that keep hurt out also keep joy from getting in. She thought about it and said, maybe she needs someone to show her it's safe to open a door. Out of the mouths of babes, Victoria whispered, feeling those carefully constructed walls crack a little more. She also said she wants to invite you to her school play next month. She's playing a sunflower. Fair warning, there will be terrible singing and handmade costumes. For the first time in 3 years, Victoria laughed. Really laughed. Not the polite professional sound she'd perfected for business dinners, but genuine, unguarded joy. I wouldn't miss it. As they rose to start their day, Ethan paused. Mrs. Sterling, Victoria, whoever betrayed you, they're the exception, not the rule. Don't let one person's greed blind you to all the loyalty surrounding you. Walking back to the house, Victoria realized that Ethan had given her something more valuable than his honesty or his work ethic. He'd given her permission to hope again, to believe that trust wasn't weakness but strength in its purest form. The investigation would happen, the traitor would be found, but it wouldn't define her anymore. She had a sunflower play to attend, a household of loyal people to appreciate, and perhaps, though she hardly dared think it, a connection with someone who saw past her billions to the woman underneath. The night of Lily's school play arrived faster than Victoria expected. She stood in front of her mirror, having changed outfits 3 times, wondering why she felt more nervous than before any board meeting. The designer suit felt wrong, too formal for an elementary school production. Finally, she settled on a simple dress her mother had loved, one she hadn't worn since the funeral. You look beautiful, ma'am, Maria said, peeking into the room. Lily will be so happy you're coming. The school auditorium was a world away from the venues Victoria usually frequented. Handmade decorations covered the walls, and the air buzzed with excited children and proud parents. She spotted Ethan immediately, saving a seat with his jacket, his face lighting up when he saw her. You came, he said softly, as if he'd still harbored doubts. I promised, Victoria replied, settling beside him, acutely aware of the warmth radiating from his presence. The play was, as warned, terrible in the most endearing way possible. Children forgot lines, sunflowers wilted, and someone's bee costume fell apart mid-scene. But when Lily stepped forward for her solo, her clear voice singing about reaching for the sun, Victoria found tears streaming down her face. She's magnificent, she whispered to Ethan, who was recording on his phone with shaking hands. She practices in the hospital during treatments, he whispered back. Says it makes the other kids feel better. After the play, Lily bounded over, still in her sunflower costume. Mrs. Victoria, did you see? I only forgot 2 lines. You were perfect, Victoria said, meaning it. The best sunflower I've ever seen. Daddy says you have lots of flowers in your garden. Maybe I could see them sometime. I promise I won't pick any. You can visit anytime you want, Victoria heard herself saying. In fact, we could plant your own special flower bed just for you. The joy on Lily's face was matched only by the gratitude in Ethan's eyes. As other parents approached, curious about the elegantly dressed woman with Ethan Mitchell, Victoria found herself introduced simply as a friend. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just a friend. It was the best title she'd had in years. Later, as they walked to the parking lot, Lily between them holding both their hands, Victoria felt a completeness she'd thought lost forever. This simple moment of connection, was what she'd been missing. Ice cream to celebrate? Ethan suggested, and Lily's squeal of delight decided it. At the small ice cream parlor, Victoria watched father and daughter debate flavors with serious concentration. When Lily insisted Victoria try her bubblegum ice cream, "It's blue," Victoria didn't hesitate, even though the color was alarming. "Brain freeze!" Lily giggled as Victoria winced from eating too fast. "Daddy does the same thing. You two are silly." As Ethan helped Lily with her insulin before the ice cream, Victoria saw the practiced ease of their routine, the way Lily didn't even pause in her chatter about the play. This was their normal, their strength, their love. "Mrs. Sterling," a voice interrupted. One of her board members stood nearby, clearly shocked to see her in such a casual setting. The old Victoria would have stiffened, put up walls, retreated into CEO mode. Instead, she simply smiled. "Mr. Davidson, I'd like you to meet my friends, Ethan and Lily Mitchell." After brief pleasantries, Davidson left, and Ethan looked at her curiously. "Won't he ask questions? About you being here?" "Let him," Victoria said, surprising herself with how little she cared. "I've spent 3 years letting fear of judgment control me. I'm done with that." As they drove home, Ethan had walked to the school. Lily fell asleep in the back seat, her sunflower petals askew. Victoria caught Ethan watching her in the rearview mirror, something unspoken in his gaze. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for coming tonight, for seeing her, for everything." "Thank you," Victoria countered, "for reminding me who I used to be, who I want to be again." They pulled into her mansion's driveway, and Ethan gently lifted the sleeping Lily. As Victoria watched them, she made a decision that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. "Ethan," she called softly, "the guest house is empty. It has 3 bedrooms, a full kitchen, and it's closer to Lily's school. If you're interested." The look on his face, surprise, hope, gratitude, and something deeper, made her heart race in a way no business triumph ever had. "I'll think about it," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "We'll think about it." As she watched their taillights disappear, Victoria touched the paper flower Lily had given her, now pinned to her dress. Tomorrow would bring challenges, decisions, the ongoing investigation. But tonight, she'd remembered what it felt like to be human, to be seen, to be part of something as simple and profound as a little girl's joy. For the first time in 3 years, Victoria Sterling went to bed not calculating risks or planning strategies, but dreaming of sunflowers and the promise of a different kind of future. 2 weeks after the play, Ethan and Lily moved into the guest house. Victoria watched from her window as they carried boxes, Lily directing the operation with 7-year-old authority while clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. "Daddy, Mrs. Victoria's roses can see my window," Lily exclaimed, her voice carrying across the garden. "They can watch me sleep and keep the bad dreams away." Victoria's heart clenched at the innocent words. She'd been having fewer bad dreams herself lately, though she wasn't ready to examine why. The investigation at her company had concluded, a junior executive trying to pay off gambling debts, but for the first time, the betrayal hadn't devastated her. She'd had other things, better things occupying her mind. "Ms. Sterling?" Marcus appeared at her door. "Mr. Mitchell asked if you'd join them for dinner tonight. He said Lily insists on cooking for you as a thank you." "Cooking?" Victoria raised an eyebrow. "She's 7. Marcus smiled. "Apparently she makes excellent peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and Mr. Mitchell will handle the actual cooking." That evening, Victoria found herself in the cozy guest house kitchen, watching Ethan navigate around his daughter as she carefully spread peanut butter with intense concentration. The domestic scene was so foreign to Victoria's usual world that it felt like stepping into another life entirely. "The secret," Lily informed her seriously, "is to spread all the way to the edges. Daddy taught me that. He says life is like a sandwich. You shouldn't leave any part empty." "Your daddy is very wise," Victoria said, catching Ethan's eye over Lily's head. He was stirring something that smelled like heaven on the stove, and the afternoon light caught the silver beginning to thread through his dark hair. "He reads to me every night," Lily continued, now applying jelly with scientific precision, "even when he's really tired from working." "Do you have someone who reads to you?" The innocent question hit harder than intended. "No, sweetheart, not anymore." "That's sad," Lily said matter-of-factly. "Everyone needs stories. Maybe Daddy could read to you too. He does voices." Ethan's cheeks reddened. "Lily, I don't think Mrs. Victoria, I'd love that," Victoria heard herself say, surprising everyone, including herself. After dinner, which was simple but somehow the best meal Victoria had eaten in years, Lily showed Victoria her room. The walls were covered in drawings, many featuring a figure with yellow hair labeled Mommy in Heaven, watching over stick figures labeled Daddy and Me. "This is new," Lily said, pointing to a recent drawing. It showed the same figures, but now there was a third person on Earth, with dark hair and a red dress. "That's you, see? You're smiling now." Victoria had to turn away, ostensibly to examine a collection of painted rocks on the windowsill, but really to compose herself. When had a child's drawing ever meant more than million-dollar paintings in her collection? Later, as Ethan tucked Lily in, Victoria found herself included in the bedtime ritual. Lily had chosen The Secret Garden, and Ethan's voice transformed as he read, becoming different characters, making his daughter giggle despite her drooping eyelids. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Lily asked Victoria sleepily. "We could work in the real garden. I promise I'll be careful with your mama's roses." "I'd like that very much," Victoria whispered, smoothing the child's hair. Outside Lily's room, the atmosphere shifted. Without the buffer of the child's presence, Victoria became acutely aware of being alone with Ethan in the soft lighting of the hallway. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly, "for making her feel so special. She hasn't been this happy since Emma," Victoria finished gently. "You don't have to avoid saying her name. She's part of your story, part of what made you who you are." Ethan's eyes widened slightly. "Most people get uncomfortable when I mention her, like grief is contagious. Grief is just love with nowhere to go," Victoria said, then smiled sadly. "My mother told me that when my grandmother died. I didn't understand it until I lost her too." They moved to the small living room, where Ethan poured coffee from a pot that was already brewing. "Tell me about her. Your mother." Victoria found herself sharing stories she hadn't told anyone in years. About her mother's laugh that could fill a boardroom, her fierce protection of those she loved, her insistence that success meant nothing without kindness. "She would have liked you," Victoria said, surprising herself with the admission. "She always said the measure of a person was how they treated those who could do nothing for them." "She sounds remarkable," Ethan said, like her daughter. The compliment hung in the air between them, charged with possibility. Victoria felt the familiar urge to deflect, to retreat behind professional barriers, but something in Ethan's steady gaze kept her present. "I'm trying to be," she admitted. "For so long I thought strength meant not needing anyone, building walls so high that nothing could hurt me. But watching you with Lily, seeing how you've built a life on love despite your loss, it's made me realize I've been doing it all wrong." Ethan set down his coffee cup, his movement deliberate. "Victoria, can I share something Emma told me before she died?" Victoria nodded, her heart racing at the sound of her first name in his voice. "She said that hearts are like gardens. You can build walls around them, but nothing will grow. Or you can leave them open, tend them carefully. And yes, sometimes storms will come and damage what you've grown. But the beauty that blooms in between the storms, that makes it all worthwhile." "Your Emma was wise too," Victoria managed, her voice thick. "She would have liked you as well," Ethan said. "She always championed women who carve their own paths, and she would have been thrilled to see Lily with a strong female role model." "I'm not sure I'm role model material," Victoria protested. "I've made so many mistakes." "That's exactly what makes you one," Ethan interrupted gently. "You're showing her that people can change, can choose trust over fear, connection over isolation. Do you know what she told me yesterday? She said you must be magic because you made the sad leave Daddy's eyes." Victoria stood abruptly, overwhelmed by the emotion threatening to spill over. "I should go. Early meeting tomorrow." Ethan rose too, walking her to the door. "Victoria, wait." His hand caught hers, the touch electric. "I need you to know something. Us. It's not about the job or the house or gratitude. When I see you with Lily, when I watch you choosing joy over fear, when you share your stories, I see you, the real you, and she's extraordinary." Victoria looked at their joined hands, his calloused from honest work, hers soft but cold from years of keeping people at arm's length. "Ethan, I'm scared. I've forgotten how to do this, how to be human." "You haven't forgotten," he said softly, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her hand. "You've just been protecting yourself, but maybe it's time to let someone protect you for a change." The kiss, when it came, was as gentle as his touch on her roses, tentative, questioning, offering her every opportunity to pull away. Instead, Victoria leaned in, feeling walls she'd spent years building crumble like sand. When they parted, both breathing unsteadily, Ethan's eyes held a question. "Tomorrow," Victoria whispered. "Lily wants to work in the garden tomorrow." "Just Lily?" he asked, a smile playing at his lips. "No," Victoria admitted. feeling braver than she had in any boardroom. Not just Lily. As she walked back to the main house, Victoria touched her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. Through the guest house window, she could see him checking on Lily one more time, the devoted father who'd somehow seen past her billions to find her heart. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The board would have opinions about her growing closeness to an employee. The media would eventually notice. Her carefully controlled world would shift. But tonight, under stars that seemed especially bright, Victoria Sterling allowed herself to hope. Maybe Ethan was right. Maybe hearts were meant to be gardens, not fortresses. And maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found someone worth weathering the storms with. The next month passed in a blur of small miracles. Victoria found herself keeping regular hours for the first time in years. Home for dinners in the guest house. Her hands dirty from gardening with Lily. Her heart lighter than she'd thought possible. But happiness, Victoria had learned, made some people uncomfortable. Victoria, we need to talk. Richard Davidson, her board chairman, sat across from her in the conference room, his expression disapproving. There are concerns about your relationship with a member of your household staff. His name is Ethan, Victoria said calmly, though her hands clenched under the table. And my personal life isn't board business. It is when it affects your judgment. You've been distracted, leaving early, delegating major decisions. And now I hear you're planning to have him accompany you to the charity gala. People are talking, Victoria. Let them talk, she replied. But Richard's next words stopped her cold. They're saying you've lost your edge, that you're being manipulated by a fortune hunter who's using his sick daughter to... Stop, Victoria's voice could have frozen fire. If you ever speak about Lily that way again, you'll need more than a board vote to protect you. That child has more integrity in her little finger than half the people in this building. Richard raised his hands placatingly. I'm just telling you what others are saying. Your father built this company on reputation. My father built this company on innovation and treating people with respect. Victoria shot back. Two things that seemed to be lacking in this conversation. She left the meeting unsettled, not because she doubted Ethan. She'd learned to recognize genuine kindness, but because she knew the scrutiny would only intensify. That evening, she found Ethan in the garden teaching Lily how to properly mulch the flower beds. Daddy, why does Mrs. Victoria look sad again? Lily asked, her perceptiveness uncanny. Why don't you go wash up for dinner, Sunflower? Ethan suggested. I'll help Mrs. Victoria finish here. Once Lily skipped inside, Ethan turned to Victoria. What happened? She told him about the meeting, watching his face carefully. Instead of anger, she saw resignation. You expected this, she said. It wasn't a question. A billionaire CEO and her gardener? Of course people would talk. He sighed, pulling off his work gloves. Victoria, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Is this us worth the complications it's bringing to your life? Yes, she answered without hesitation. But Ethan, it's going to get worse. The media, the speculation, the invasions of privacy, and Lily, that's what worries me most, he admitted. She's been through so much. If photographers start following her to school, if kids tease her because of gossip about us. They stood in the garden where it all began, surrounded by roses that had witnessed their journey from suspicion to trust to something deeper. What do you want to do? Victoria asked, though the question terrified her. Ethan moved closer, cupping her face in his hands. I want to wake up every morning knowing you're part of our lives. I want Lily to keep having a female role model who shows her that strength and kindness aren't mutually exclusive. I want to stop pretending that I'm not completely in love with you. Victoria's breath caught. Ethan, but, he continued, I won't be the reason your life's work suffers, and I won't let pride put my daughter at risk. So you tell me, Victoria Sterling, what do you want? Looking into his eyes, Victoria saw her future in two paths. One safe, controlled, lonely, the path she'd walked for 3 years. The other uncertain, complicated, but filled with the laughter of a 7-year-old girl and the love of a man who saw her truly. I want you, she said simply, both of you, and I'm willing to fight for it. His kiss was different this time, not gentle but claiming, a promise and a challenge combined. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Victoria felt more like herself than she had in years. Then we face it together, Ethan said, whatever comes. Daddy? Mrs. Victoria? Lily's voice called from the guest house. I made dessert. It's only a little bit burned. They laughed, the tension breaking. Hand in hand, they walked toward the warm light spilling from the kitchen windows, toward their unconventional family, toward whatever storms might come. The charity gala arrived with all the pomp Victoria had come to expect from high society events. What was different was the man beside her, devastating in his tuxedo, and the little girl who'd insisted on helping them get ready. "Daddy, you look like a prince," Lily had declared, then turned to Victoria in her midnight blue gown. "And you're definitely a queen, not a princess, because princesses need saving and you save yourself." Now, as they entered the ballroom, Victoria felt the weight of hundreds of eyes, the whispers that followed their path. "Steady," Ethan murmured, his hand warm on her back. "Remember, we're here for the children's hospital. Everything else is just noise." He was right. The gala benefited the very hospital where Emma had spent her final days, where Lily now received treatment. It was why Victoria had insisted on attending despite the inevitable scrutiny. "Victoria!" A shrill voice cut through the murmur. Cassandra Whitman, society queen and gossip extraordinaire, descended upon them in a cloud of perfume. "And this must be your companion, Ethan Mitchell," he introduced himself with easy confidence. "Pleasure to meet you." Cassandra's eyes glittered with malicious interest. "Oh, I know who you are." The gardener turned. "What is it now? House manager? How progressive of Victoria to bring you." "What's progressive?" Victoria interjected smoothly. "Is Ethan's initiative to create a therapy garden at the children's hospital. Perhaps you'd like to hear about it? Or would you prefer to make a donation first?" As Cassandra retreated, flustered, Ethan squeezed Victoria's hand. "Nicely done." The evening progressed better than expected. Ethan's natural warmth drew people in, his genuine passion for the hospital project earning respect even from skeptics. Victoria watched him explain the therapeutic benefits of gardening to a group of donors, his eyes lighting up as he described how patients could grow their own flowers to brighten their rooms. "He's quite something," a familiar voice said beside her. Victoria turned to find Elena Rodriguez, her fiercest competitor and sometimes ally. "Not what I expected from the headlines." "Since when do you believe headlines, Elena?" "True." Elena studied Ethan across the room. "He's either the best con artist I've ever seen, or he genuinely adores you. The way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching. It's real," Victoria said quietly. "All of it." "Then you're braver than I am," Elena admitted. "Opening yourself up like that after everything you've been through. I couldn't do it." Before Victoria could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. A young reporter had somehow gotten past security, camera already rolling as she ambushed guests with invasive questions. Victoria watched in horror as the reporter zeroed in on Ethan, who'd stepped away to take a call from Lily's babysitter. "Mr. Mitchell, is it true you seduced Victoria Sterling to secure a future for your sick daughter? How does it feel to go from servant to—" "That's enough." Victoria's voice cut through the ballroom like a blade. She strode toward them, every inch the CEO who'd built an empire. "Security, please escort this person out." But Ethan held up a hand. "No, let her ask her questions." He turned to the reporter, calm and dignified. "Yes, my daughter is sick. Yes, I was Ms. Sterling's gardener. And yes, I love her. Not her money, not her status, her. The woman who reads bedtime stories to my daughter, who gets dirt under her manicured nails planting flowers, who chose trust over fear even when it terrified her." The ballroom had gone silent, everyone watching. "You want a story?" Ethan continued. "Here it is. Victoria Sterling saved my family not with money but with kindness. She saw us as human beings worthy of respect and care. And if that threatens you, if you need to turn love into something ugly to sell papers, then I pity you." The reporter lowered her camera, seemingly at a loss. Security led her away, but the damage was done, or so Victoria thought until the applause started. First Elena, then another donor, then another, until the entire ballroom was clapping. "Did I overshadow your event?" Ethan asked, as they finally found a quiet corner. "You made it unforgettable," Victoria corrected, pulling him close despite the watching eyes. "But I need to tell you something. That reporter, she was just the beginning. There's something bigger happening. Someone's orchestrating this, trying to hurt us." "Who?" Before Victoria could answer, her phone buzzed. A message from Lily's babysitter. "Come home now. Emergency." The drive home was the longest of Victoria's life. Ethan's knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel, while she fielded frantic calls from the babysitter. All they knew was that Lily had collapsed during her bedtime routine, her blood sugar dangerously low despite following her normal protocol. They found the guest house in chaos. Paramedics were already there, Lily unconscious on a stretcher, the babysitter in tears. "Her insulin," the lead paramedic explained tersely. "The vial was compromised. We need to get her to the hospital immediately." "I'm riding with her," Ethan said, his voice hollow. Victoria had never seen him so shattered. Go, she urged. I'll follow right behind. As the ambulance screamed away, Victoria turned to Marcus, who'd appeared within minutes of the alert. Lock down everything. I want to know who's been in this house, who had access to Lily's medication, everything. At the hospital, the same hallways that had hosted their charity gala planning now felt like a maze of fear. Victoria found Ethan in the pediatric ICU waiting room, still in his tuxedo, his head in his hands. She's stable, he said without looking up. But it was close. So close. If the babysitter hadn't checked on her when she did, Victoria sat beside him, taking his hand. We'll find who did this. I know who did this. His voice was ice. The insulin was tampered with. Someone wanted to hurt my baby to get to us. To prove I'm an unfit father, that being with you puts her at risk. Ethan, no. This isn't it? He finally looked at her, his eyes red with unshed tears. That reporter tonight was just the start. Someone's trying to destroy us. And they're using Lily as ammunition. A doctor emerged before Victoria could respond. Mr. Mitchell? She's asking for you. And for someone named Mrs. Victoria? They found Lily small and pale in the hospital bed, but her eyes were open, alert. I'm sorry, she whispered. Did I ruin your fancy party? Oh, sunflower, Ethan choked out, gathering her carefully in his arms. You could never ruin anything. The medicine tasted funny, Lily said, her voice stronger. But I took it anyway because I'm supposed to be brave. Victoria's phone buzzed. Marcus. We have him. Donald Whitman, Cassandra's son. He bribed one of the catering staff to switch the insulin during the gala preparations. Apparently, his mother promised him a position at her company if he could break you and Ethan up. Security footage confirms everything. The revelation hit Victoria like a physical blow. Cassandra Whitman, who'd smiled at her at countless events, who'd pledged donations to the hospital, had orchestrated an attack on a child out of petty jealousy and social climbing. What is it? Ethan asked, reading her expression. She showed him the message. His face went through several transformations, shock, rage, then a cold determination she'd never seen before. Press charges, he said quietly. Everything. Attempted murder, child endangerment, whatever sticks. They tried to kill my daughter to hurt you. That ends now. Daddy? Lily's small voice interrupted. Are you and Mrs. Victoria in trouble because of me? No, baby, Victoria said firmly, moving to the bed. Some bad people are in trouble because they tried to hurt you, but you're safe now, and they'll never come near you again. Promise? I promise, Victoria and Ethan said in unison. As Lily drifted back to sleep, aided by the mild sedatives in her IV, Ethan and Victoria stepped into the hallway. This changes everything, Ethan said. The investigation, the media coverage, it'll be brutal, for all of us. I know, Victoria replied. But Ethan, if we let them win, if we let fear drive us apart, then Lily almost died for nothing. I won't let that happen. He studied her for a long moment. You're sure? This is your last chance to walk away clean, to go back to your safe, controlled world. Instead of answering with words, Victoria pulled him into a fierce embrace. My world isn't safe without you two in it. We started this when you refused to take money from an open safe. We're not stopping now because someone tried to steal something infinitely more precious. They held each other in the sterile hospital corridor. Two people who'd found love in the most unlikely circumstances, now bound by something deeper than emotion, a shared determination to protect the family they'd built. 6 months later, the autumn sun painted the Sterling Mansion gardens in shades of gold and crimson, but the real color came from the hundreds of paper flowers adorning every surface, created by children from the hospital's new therapy garden program. Places, everyone, Lily commanded, resplendent in her flower girl dress, her insulin pump discreetly hidden beneath the sash. The music's about to start. Victoria smoothed her simple white dress one last time, her hands surprisingly steady. Through the window she could see the guests assembled, employees from her company, families from the hospital, and yes, even some society figures who'd stood by them through the scandal. You look beautiful, Sarah, her assistant and now maid of honor, said. Your mother would be so proud. She'd probably wonder why it took me so long to figure out what really mattered, Victoria replied, touching the pearl necklace that had been her mother's. The Whitman trial had been brutal, as expected, but the public response had surprised everyone. Instead of scandal, they'd found support. Stories poured in from other single parents Ethan had helped, from employees Victoria had quietly supported through difficulties. The narrative shifted from Billionaire and her gardener to something more powerful. two people who'd chosen love over fear. Ready? Elena Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, having surprisingly volunteered to walk Victoria down the aisle. Your gardener's looking rather nervous out there. Though I suppose we can't call him that anymore, can we, Director of Community Outreach? Victoria smiled. Ethan's new role, overseeing the company's charitable initiatives, had been his idea. I want to earn my place, he'd said. Not as your husband, but as someone who contributes. He'd been brilliant at it. His genuine warmth opening doors that corporate strategies never could. The music began and Victoria stepped into the garden. The same roses that had witnessed their first meeting now framed an aisle leading to where Ethan waited, Marcus standing as his best man. But it was Lily, practically vibrating with excitement, who stole the show. I kept the ring safe, Daddy, she announced loudly as they reached the altar, causing a ripple of laughter through the crowd. The ceremony was simple, the vows personal. Ethan spoke of finding light in his darkest hour, of a woman who'd chosen to see beyond circumstances to the heart beneath. Victoria talked about walls and gardens, about learning that strength meant being vulnerable with the right person. I promise, she said, her voice clear and strong, to trust you with my fears as well as my joys, to build our life on honesty and hope, and to love your daughter as fiercely as you do. And I promise, Ethan replied, his eyes bright, to tend our love like your mother's roses, with patience, dedication, and the understanding that the most beautiful things grow when given room to bloom. When they kissed, Lily cheered the loudest, and if there wasn't a dry eye in the garden, well, that was only fitting. The reception was held in the main house, which had been transformed. Gone was the cold perfection, replaced by warmth and laughter. Children from the hospital program ran between tables. Employees mixed freely with board members. And at the center of it all, a little girl danced with her father and new mother. Did you ever think that morning when you found the safe we'd end up here? Victoria asked as they swayed to the music. Honestly? Ethan spun her gently. Part of me hoped. You looked so lost standing in that window watching me work. I thought, someone needs to show her it's okay to be happy. And you did, Victoria said. You and Lily both. Later, as the evening wound down, they found themselves in the study where it all began. The safe was there, now used to store Lily's artwork and precious family photos. I have something for you, Ethan said, pulling out a small wrapped package. Inside was a compass, old and well-worn. It was my father's. He gave it to me when I married Emma, said it would always point me toward home. I want you to have it. Victoria traced the worn metal, understanding the magnitude of the gift. Ethan, you are our home now, he said simply. You gave us shelter when we just needed a job. You gave us love when we thought we'd used up our allocation. You gave Lily, a mother, and me a reason to believe in second chances. Through the window, they could see Lily in the garden, teaching other children how to make paper flowers by moonlight, her laughter carrying on the evening breeze. What are you thinking? Ethan asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Victoria leaned into his warmth, watching their daughter, for that's what Lily was now, in every way that mattered, create beauty from simple paper and imagination. I'm thinking, she said slowly, that sometimes the best treasures aren't locked in safes. They're found in gardens, in hospital rooms, in the laughter of children who see the world as it could be, and in CEOs who learn to leave their hearts as open as their safes. Ethan teased gently. Especially then, Victoria agreed, turning in his arms. Though maybe we should keep the actual safe locked from now on. We've had enough tests for one lifetime. As if summoned by talk of her, Lily burst through the door. Mama Victoria, Daddy, come quick. The moon is making the roses glow. And they followed her, hand in hand, into a future that neither could have imagined that morning when trust was tested and love began to bloom. The Sterling mansion was no longer just a house of success and loneliness. It had become what Victoria's mother had always hoped. A home built on love, filled with family, and tended with the same care as the roses that had witnessed it all. In the end, the open safe had revealed the greatest treasure of all. Not money or jewels, but the courage to trust, the strength to love, and the wisdom to know that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, like a gardener who saw past billions to find a heart worth tending.